This is a PowerPoint on tech cards. Let's start with the most obvious one in Secrets. Eater of Secrets has been a meme, terrible tech card for a long time. However, Secrets do have powerful tech cards, like Tight-Lipped Witness or Flare. Haha. But let's get one thing clear. Typically, there's no point to run something like Secret Tech in a deck. That's why I started with it in here. Because historically, the only secret that you actually have to care about is Ice Block. Yes, Secret Mage was powerful for a while, but running Secret Tech didn't matter because their secrets are so easy to trigger. Secret Tech just doesn't ever matter outside of Ice Block because most secrets just trigger instantly or incredibly efficiently. Or they trigger when you're trying to play your tech cards. Something like Eater of Secrets, a prolifically bad card, actually can't work against Objection. That alone is like why Secret Tech usually doesn't work. Things like Tight-Lipped Witness and Flare, though, are usually pretty decent against Ice Block because Ice Block is a secret that only triggers when you're about to die. So if you are able to use these cards, you can just save them for turns that you're going to kill your opponent. The real best anti-Ice Block card, though, is Ashen Elemental. It's seen play in so many different decks and so many different metas when Ice Block is very powerful because it has multiple uses. Most tech cards need to have multiple uses or be very strong individually to actually make sense as cards. So that's where we get to drawing cards. Of course, I already brought up Ashen Elemental as a very strong card because it is multifaceted. Yes, it can deal damage through Ice Block because if you set your opponent to 2 health, it'll kill them. But it's also very efficient against decks that draw a lot of cards. Things like Helia and For Watchpost fall in this exact same case. Now that Miracle Rogue is dead effectively in Wild, a lot of this, like what I'm talking about, doesn't really apply anymore because Miracle Rogue is one of the most heavily teched against decks to ever exist in Hearthstone. Mainly because it's so easy to tech against, which says a lot about how powerful it was as a deck when it's still, so you had to play all of these cards just to be competitive against it. But yeah, like I'm saying, cards like Far Watchpost heavily punish your opponent for leaving it up and letting them draw multiple cards because it makes all their cards cost 1 more. Ashen Elemental is very specific in when you have to play it on turns your opponent wants to draw a lot of cards, but you can typically deal like pretty good damage with this card if you do time it correctly. And of course, like I said, it's mainly used against Ice Block, but there have been instances where, say, against Discard Warlock. Discard Warlock is a deck known for drawing a lot of cards. There have been times where Ashen Elemental will deal actually 10 damage or more to an opponent in 1 turn as a 3-mana 2/4. That's insane. And then, of course, Helia. Helia is actually really strong. It does, like, basically, it's a combination of Far Watchpost and Ashen Elemental, and it heals you. The issue is it's in Death Knight, and Death Knight is a really bad class. Helia is just, like, one of the best cards in Death Knight for a reason. But this is what I'm talking about. Drawing cards is incredibly powerful. It would always be incredibly powerful. So being able to punish your opponent for playing decks that draw a lot of cards is very significant. Like any kind of miracle deck, miracle decks are very popular. They're typically very strong. 2 of them just got nerfed, but there's still Druid and Priest that can play miracle decks that make things like Ashen Elemental a lot better. Then you have hand dumping. Hand dumping is something I like to... it doesn't really effectively have a name. I like to call it hand dumping. It's typically used against Rogue, these 4 cards. A lot of other cards also work in the same way, right? Where if you play like a set amount of cards in a turn, they'll trigger, or like if your opponent does certain things, they'll trigger. But these 4 secrets are typically the most, how do I put this? Recognizable cards to play around hand dumping. Again, like I said, it's typically Rogue that has been, teched against in these ways over time. Galloping Savior, it was very strong in Standard against Rogue. Rat Trap, Motion Denied, Hidden Wisdom, again, very strong in Wild against Miracle Rogue before it was nerfed. So, it's just being able to punish your opponent for doing something they want to do is very powerful, especially when the cards themselves are very powerful. Rat Trap gives you a 6/6 for 2 mana. Motion Denied deals 6 damage to your opponent, or 9 if you have upgraded. Galloping Savior gives you a 3/4 taunt for 1 mana. And Hidden Wisdom gives you 2, it lets you draw 2 cards, which is something that Paladin doesn't really have access to very efficiently. So cards like this that are powerful in their own right and target specific strategies are powerful tech cards, even if they don't seem like it on paper. Then we have spells. Spells are just always going to be powerful. They're always going to be good. Spells are typically better than minions on average. Like, a lot of classes will just play only spells and then like maybe 1 or 2 minions in their deck, and that happens very often. So having ways to disrupt your opponent from playing a lot of spells and effectively skipping their turn is very powerful. A lot of these cards are strong individually in their own right. Like something like Cult Neophyte is just, it's also a Razorfen, oh gosh, what was it? Razorfen Raptor, 2-mana 3/2. So it is premiumly statted, and it slows your opponent down for a turn if they want to play any spells. If they have a combo turn, it definitely affects them. That's why cards like these are typically very strong, because they definitely affect combo turns. Almost every combo turn in Wild has at least one spell in it, and if you have to, you know, delay your turn by... or if you have to delay your turn because your spells cost 1 more, that's very significant, especially if they cost 2 or 5 more from Lotheb. Then we have weapons. Weapons get a bad rap for tech cards because whenever your opponent plays a weapon tech, it feels really, really bad for multiple reasons. It feels bad because, well, you're losing your weapon and that sucks, but it also feels bad because, like, why is your opponent running weapon tech? Weapons they're strong, don't get me wrong. They're very good, but it's almost never correct to run weapon removal because, like, decks aren't built around weapons in most formats. And the only decks that are typically built around weapons are things like Kingsbane Rogue. And, well, you can't destroy Kingsbane unless you run something like Cobalt Sticky Finger. However, if you're running Cobalt Sticky Finger, you're running a 5-mana 4/4 that is useless into almost every single other deck you will play against. Or it's just, like, not that great into most decks. It's awkward. Weapon removal is just also bad for other reasons. Running cards like Glacial Shard is typically just better into everything overall than running weapon removal. Yeah, it doesn't remove the weapon, but it makes it so they can't swing for 1 turn. Glacial Shard is a 1-mana 2/1 that effectively is just better than Cobalt Sticky Finger at doing its exact job. Wow. And Glacial Shard has other practical uses. You can freeze minions, you can freeze other decks and not have to run this fucking shitty 4/4. It also lets you freeze classes like Druid and Demon Hunter, which don't always use weapons to deal their attack with their hero's face. And it's just also directly outclassed by Zephyrus, because Zephyrus will see weapons. He will give you Acidic Swamp Ooze or Harrison Jones, and, like, Zephyrus is very popular. He's a very strong card for a reason, so why would you not run him in your Reno decks? Why would you run these, like, bad weapon removal cards? It's just, weapon removal is one of those things where it's so ultra specific that it just can't do anything well. It can't be that great unless you have a meta where weapons are incredibly powerful, and a lot of decks are running multiple very strong weapons that you need to target, which never happens. It just never happens. Then we have, well, I'm going to call it miscellaneous tech cards, where you have things like Zombies, Boom Pistol Bully, Plate Breaker. These are the options I want to give. Cards like Zombies, Snipe, Objection, what else is there? Like, Explosive Runes, that's the one thing of. Cards like that prevent, and Pressure Plate, that make it so your opponent can't really do their combos from hand, right? So say you have Zombies up, well, your opponent can't play their Sorcerer's Apprentice, or they can't play their like, Auctioneer. They can't do these things, right? And it's very powerful to prevent your opponent from being able to play these cards when they're playing, like, 1 or 2 minions in their deck, and they can't really play those minions because they will die to your secrets. It's genuinely very powerful. It's one of the reasons that Secret Hunter exists ever, is to target decks like that. Then you have something like Boom Pistol Bully, right? Where as the meta has progressed in Hearthstone, battle cries become more and more powerful. So you have cards like Boom Pistol Bully and I think it's Nuri and Unraveler, I can't remember off the top of my head. The 2-mana 1/4 that makes Battlecry minions cost 2 more are just really, really strong into a lot of decks. And Boom Pistol Bully has overtaken Lotheb as a played card. Lotheb sees, like, not very much play anymore because Boom Pistol Bully is just kind of better. It targets a lot more decks. Battle cries are arguably very, like, stronger than spells usually, battle cries specifically. So it's, like, actually matters a lot of the time to see something like Boom Pistol Bully. And then you have Plate Breaker. I chose Plate Breaker specifically because it is a meme bad tech card, right? It's a bad card, right? Not when Control Warrior is powerful. Control Warrior hasn't been good in Wild in probably 10 years. Like, actually, it's just usually not very good to play Control Warrior. Yeah, Even Warrior was pretty good during Titans, and that was actually another meta where Plate Breaker is actually pretty decent. It's just only when Control Warrior is good is Plate Breaker actually a good card. Because, let's be real here, a lot of the time, Warrior is getting like 30, 40, or more armor in a lot of like slower matchups. So running a 5-mana 5/5 that deals 30, 40 damage, I don't think anyone would ever say that that's not good. It's just Plate Breaker has this negative connotation because of it not being a good card a lot of the time. It is a very meta-specific tech card that doesn't see a lot of play a lot of the times. But Odin Warrior is good. Plate Breaker genuinely is a good card to run either in ETC or sometimes main deck, depending on what kind of decks you're playing. But that's going to be it from me. I wrote up a little bit of a different conclusion for this because I want to be a little more educational. Tech options are best when they target at multiple things, just like Ashen Elemental. Ashen Elemental targets Ice Block and it targets draw heavy decks. They're necessary when like specific play patterns or decks are too strong, like Miracle Rogue and Mage and Miracle Druid and Miracle Priest. I mean, they're all Miracle decks. So having cards that, target them when you have a lot of decks that are very powerful and do the same thing, that's when tech cards become their best. You had like cards like Razor Scale, which was very powerful into Miracle Rogue and decks like that, but without them being around anymore, something like Razor Scale, although it was ultra powerful into those decks, doesn't matter anymore. There's just no targets for it. And then hyper-specific tech is usually really bad. Weapon tech, secret tech, things like that are just usually not worth playing almost ever. Like, going back to the secret slide, I run Flare in decks because it's a 1-mana draw 1 card in Hunter that has bad card draw. That alone gives it enough of a use that, like, it's worth running a lot of the time in a lot of decks. Hunter just has a lot of ways to get through things like Ice Block anyway, so a card like Flare just, like, on paper isn't that great. And then typically, like I'm saying, when a tech card is good, it means it's an individually card outside of just one specific matchup. Razor Scale is great into all Miracle decks. It's actually still pretty good into some aggro decks because their 1-cost minions cost 2. Ashen Elemental, of course, we already listed reasons why that's good. Things like that. It's just a lot of people don't understand why some cards are strong, why some tech cards are stronger than others, and I wanted to make a video that kind of explained that in a decent enough way, what things that usually get teched against, and usually what's very good. But yeah, that's gonna be it for me. If you guys enjoy, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you think down below. Do you like this style of video where I'm breaking down some more in-depth mechanics of the game and why things are ran? I actually really like making this video. It was very fun to make and write up the slides for. So yeah, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Shadows are rising again!
Darker than they've ever been. As evil descends from the skies, the world cries out, how will we survive? Out of the hall of explorers, and up from the dusty tomb, they grab their whips and fedoras. These legends are the